Looks like big business is realizing locking up criminals is a lot cheaper than locking up products. Just saying. Coming to paperback and e-readers, John Haynes, A Thorn in My Side. The man who rules the world takes on an agent from the CIA from the Black Boule in this action-packed all-new John Haynes series adventure. Pre-order your copy of John Haynes' A Thorn in My Side at Amazon.com and other online booksellers. Better get the coleslaw, y'all, because we're having us a barbecue. CEO of Walgreens says that locking up items on store shelves hurt their sales.
A major drugstore chain is admitting that its anti-theft measures are hurting sales. Walgreens reported an operating loss to the tune of $245 million compared to a loss of $39 million for the same quarter last year. The CEO says locking items up has stopped theft, but it also appears to be deterring honest customers from buying the items. The company's asset protection division is working on different solutions to fight retail theft. Walgreens also plans to close hundreds of stores by the end of 2025.
No, I love Walgreens.
We had a CVS like a mile from my house, not even a mile.
Yeah.
Closed. Oh. One of the saddest days of the year for me.
Sad.
It was so convenient. You just pop up there, buy some
neighborhood
kids.
drugstores essential.
You know, I no longer buy razors at CVS or the store or wherever because all the shaving razors, they're all locked up.
Yeah.
And there's nobody working it. Like there's a very thin staff. So like you got one checkout person, maybe one person on the floor. Maybe.
Yeah.
And then you got 3 or 4 people in line checking out. Then that
what
person
do you do? You're going to stand in line and wait for the...
Right. Then the person is working his or her tail off them, and I say, "Oh, can you come open this thing up for me? Get me open this thing so I can get my razors," and then walk back. And there's another 5 people in line. I mean, it's just a mess.
Yeah. So the items that are locked up aren't necessarily the most expensive items in the store. They're just the items that were stolen.
Well, though at Walgreens,
correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I'm just giving an example
they're locking up like toiletries and just stuff that seems low budget.
And things that maybe you don't want to, it's embarrassing to ask for it.
Oh, like what?
No, I'm not, I don't know. But it's,
This isn't at all Walgreens, though. This is in a select locale.
I think most Walgreens.
Like your Walgreens has shampoo locked up?
I don't know. I'd have to, maybe not. I don't know.
I guarantee you, in Lake Orion, they don't have shampoo locked up.
Well, yeah, maybe not. But I go to any city I go to, I like to go to the Walgreens right away. Stock up on some snacks for the hotel room.
Right.
Maybe some cosmetics. Maybe shampoo that I didn't pack in my carry-on.
Right. Now,
suntan lotion.
The razors are all locked up. I mean, that's a safety hazard, I guess.
But the funny thing is, or not the funny thing, but the unexpected consequence, or you should have expected it, is that they lost more money locking it up than they lost when people were stealing it.
Correct.
I think that's a point that I'm trying to make. Like, because it's locked up, because a product is locked up, I no longer buy there. Yeah, you know what I mean?
You and a lot of people.
Yeah.
You'd rather people. I guess they'd rather people. Well,
don't say it.
Not say that.
No.
But it was more. The bottom line was better when people were stealing versus locking everything up.
Now, according to reports, Walgreens CEO Tim Wentworth says that the company lost $239 million in a quarter compared to the $39 million it lost in a quarter last year after implementing security measures to lock up items. And according to Walgreens CEO Tim Wentworth, he says the new anti-theft policies that he put in place to lock up products on store shelves led to many people walking away from the store because, in his words, when you lock things up, you don't sell many of them. Now, the reason why Walgreens basically isn't making much money after these anti-theft measures were put in place is because many shoppers like myself, when we go to stores like Walgreens, wind up becoming extremely frustrated when we have to wait 5 to 10 minutes for a clerk to come to a part of the store and unlock a case in order for a person to purchase an item And because people these days are basically pressed for time in this very fast-paced, high-tech society, what happens with a lot of people is that because they don't really have the time to sit there and wait for a clerk to come to unlock a case, what they do is basically go and over to their smartphones or their computers, head over to Amazon.com or another online website and order the items that they want online and have them shipped straight to their home. And that basically has hurt Walgreens' bottom line as related to its business, because Walgreens' business as related to the convenience section of the pharmacy is basically made on people being able to pick up items and pick up items out of the store and be able to purchase them very quickly and leave the store very quickly. Unfortunately, that whole convenience has been hampered because of a trend of shoplifting that has gone on that has basically led to an increase in shrink and items being stolen from the store. And in an effort to try to decrease the shrink, the Walgreens CEO basically implemented these policies of locking up these store shelves and putting items in plastic cases in order to be able to deter shoplifters from being able to get access to items and walk out of the store with them without paying. Unfortunately, what has happened is while they've managed to go out and deter a lot of people from being able to shoplift in the store, what's happened is that they've deterred a lot of customers from wanting to come into the store like myself and come in to purchase items, because coming into the store to purchase items has become a headache at not only at Walgreens but also stores like Target and Walmart and many other retailers that go out here and have convenience items and groceries on their store shelves. And because people basically these days have the ability to go out here and have the ability to order items online, what more and more people are doing instead of going to stores like Walgreens is basically heading over to their smartphone or their laptop, finding the items they want online, putting those items in their cart, and then placing their orders online and having their items delivered. And this, again, has really hurt Walgreens' bottom line, because most of Walgreens' business is made from customers walking in the store. Unfortunately, a lot of customers don't really have a reason to walk in the store, and that basically is due to the policies that companies like Walgreens lobbied for as related to politics, because many stores like Walgreens and Target and many other retailers, they basically were the ones who heavily went out here and lobbied and advocated for policies like bail reform here in New York and other parts of the blue parts of the country. And sadly, as a result of implementing these policies, what has happened is that we've seen an increase in crimes such as shoplifting at retailers like Walgreens, and that's led to all of the shrink and the losses. Now, what's happening here with Walgreens is that the company basically thought that they could go out here and implement some security policies similar to ones I grew up with in the 80s, and they thought they would be able to continue doing business with these new security policies. Unfortunately, what happened is these security policies wound up backfiring. Now, back when I was a kid in the 1980s, we saw a spike in crime due to the heroin epidemic of the late 1970s. And as a result of that spike in crime here in New York, a lot of stores started to implement policies that were designed to prevent people from stealing. And I remember growing up in stores where they had bulletproof glass in front of the counters of places like the Kentucky Fried Chicken that I used to go to with my parents on 149th Street and 3rd Avenue. They had a big block of bulletproof glass and a rotating cube, and that's how that Kentucky Fried Chicken did business. Moreover, I remember bodegas basically having the same thing, where the entire front of the store up to the counter was covered in bulletproof glass, and you had to ask the clerk to give you your items. And basically, after you asked the clerk to bring you the items, they would go out here and put the items up. You would have to pay them through a coin slot, and then they would put the items in the bag and put them in the rotating cube. And that's how a lot of businesses in the Bronx did business in addition to going out and demanding that you leave your bags at the front of the store, all of these were measures to go out here and deter shoplifting. They were designed to deter shoplifting during the days of the heroin epidemic of the 70s. And in the 80s, when the crack epidemic got hot, I remember going to stores like Dr. J's, Jeans and Sneakers store, and they basically again had you check your bags at the door because many of these retailers were basically frustrated with all of the shoplifting when they went out here and opened up a business in those ghetto areas of the South Bronx. But what's happening here with Walgreens is that this is happening in all across the country in blue areas of mostly parts of the country. And the reason why this is happening is because the policies that many of these retailers went out here and lobbied for, such as bail reform, basically have become a complete failure. And the whole approach and policy of catching shoplifters and releasing them with as related to not looking to prosecute them for shoplifting items under the cost of $1,000 is basically costing these businesses their ability to be able to do business here in America. And they can't do business here in America basically because we don't have any sort of boundary established to be able to punish people who go out here and commit crimes like shoplifting. Now, the big problem here is that many people just don't really want to understand how the law really works. And even worse than not understanding how the law really works, what's really the big problem with many Americans, as I see it, is that they just don't want to swallow their pride. They don't want to swallow their pride because this is a major American character flaw, and admit that this whole approach to crime is just a complete failure. They just don't want to admit that this whole approach to crime is just not working because around 2015, 2016, we had politicians like Bill de Blasio talking about how they were looking to try to give individuals a chance because they said many of these individuals who they believed were homeless or poor, they were out here stealing because they needed something and they just didn't have the money to be able to buy items. So what they wanted to do was soften the hardened policies that were established by mayors like Rudy Giuliani as related to a quality of life initiative. And as they looked to soften those policies by implementing policies like going out here and ending things like cashless bail, what they hoped that these individuals would do is take that second chance and look to improve the quality of their life. Unfortunately, these individuals caught up in their ideals did not understand the reality of individuals who were committing these crimes, because the individuals who were committing these crimes like shoplifting, basically these individuals were raised in a dysfunctional fashion and they had no interest in taking any second chance because they were raised to never understand how to take responsibility for themselves. And since they were never raised to take responsibility for themselves, they saw this as an opportunity to be able to continue committing more crimes. Moreover, they saw a way to escalate their behavior to basically go from committing crimes like shoplifting to creating rings for shoplifting where they would steal items so that they could go out here and create their own businesses selling these items online. And this is all a result of this whole approach to crime where basically they look to not go out here and after they find a person shoplifting, arrest and prosecute them for that crime, but look to go out here and participate in a policy of catch and release, where they basically give the person light charges. Unfortunately, giving that person light charges, what that does is go out here and minimize the consequences for a person's actions for committing a crime, and basically emboldens that individual to continue committing more crimes and escalate their behavior from participating in a misdemeanor like a shoplifting to participating in felonies like grand larceny. And this is the whole point that basically flies over the head of many of the leftists who basically have been embarrassed by the complete failure of these policies. They have been embarrassed by the failure of these policies policies that were basically lobbied for by corporate executives at these businesses, who all were out here under the ideal of giving a person a second chance, when in actuality what they were doing was basically shooting themselves in the foot by going out here and enabling the very criminals to go out here and commit more crimes. That's what many, again, Americans don't understand regarding this whole policy of this trend of shoplifting. They don't understand that actions have consequences, and because actions have consequences, people need to know what the boundaries are as related to the law, and they have to be held accountable to that standard. They have to be held accountable to that standard in order for us to have a civil society where people can go walk in a store and be able to go out and purchase items, and be able to purchase items without having to sit there and wait for a clerk to unlock a case. In order for us to have a store in a society, you have to have a standard for living. You have to have a standard for living, a quality of life, and that's what's flown over the heads of many corporate bosses and many politicians. They just don't understand you have to have a standard as related to rule of law, and you have to maintain that standard in order to have a civil society. Now, this whole standard was reestablished by politicians like Rudy Giuliani. Whether you love him or hate him, he did reestablish this standard. And over the course of the 1990s, as the crack epidemic wound up ending, we started to see here in the Bronx stores you could basically walk in and peruse the shelves without any sort of bag check or bulletproof glass. And the standard wound up being maintained as related to the quality of life at retail, and many businesses reaped lots of profits as they reopened stores in areas because there was law enforcement in place establishing a quality standard as related to dealing with shoplifters. Unfortunately, what happened after Rudy Giuliani left is that we got a series of politicians who were not going out here and being aware of maintaining these policies, and as a result, what happened is we got a complete backlog of cases when people wound up getting locked up in jail, not prison, for years. And as they sat there waiting for their cases to come to trial, what happened is that these individuals wound up waiting 3, 4, and even 5 years in jail, basically waiting for their cases, and that was all due to incompetent prosecutors who did not go out of their way to go out here and process these cases as related to the 90 to 180 days, depending on what municipality you lived in. They were supposed to prosecute these cases, but instead of prosecuting these cases, what happened was many of these prosecutors basically sat on their hands and left people to wind up rotting in jail, like Kalief Browder. Now, Kalief Browder here in New York was the catalyst for bail reform because Kalief Browder, while the son of a single mom who had a drug addiction, basically was accused of stealing a backpack. And after he was accused of stealing the backpack, he wound up in Rikers Island for 3 years. And by the 3rd year, eventually his case came to trial and he was released. But sadly, after Kalief Browder was released, he wound up taking his own life. And that basically led to Bleeding Heart Bill de Blasio and Andrew Cuomo going out here looking to implement bail reform because they didn't want to deal with the backlog of cases, a backlog of cases caused by prosecutors not going out here and doing their job. And instead of going out here and holding the prosecutors accountable for getting these cases to trial in the 180 days that they were supposed to, what they did was look to end cash bail. And as they looked to end cash bail, what this led to was basically a lot of individuals being told that they were being given this second chance. But sadly, many of these individuals did not take that chance to be responsible and basically come to court when they were supposed to. No, what they saw this was an opportunity to go out here and be able to commit more crimes because they had been emboldened by the legal system. And this is what led to the increase in shoplifting all across the country. This whole bail reform policy is the main reason why we had all of this shoplifting. And sadly, many of the people who lobbied for this bail reform are now regretting it. And like a typical American, what they're doing is, instead of admitting that they made a mistake and basically repealing this policy, what they're doing is like their ancestors did during Prohibition, and continuing to maintain their pride until their civilization is on the brink of a fall, which is what happened during Prohibition. During Prohibition, what happened with the whole ban on alcohol is that a lot of criminals basically wound up creating organized rings to be able to bring alcohol into the country, and this led to the mafia gaining more economic and political power until America had to concede that this whole effort to try to combat the organized crime basically was making the country where it was completely untenable, where these organized criminals were basically having wars in the street, and having wars in the street to the point where the average everyday citizen wasn't able to live. And this basically wound up leading to many of those who wanted to ban alcohol regretting the decision, because they said, the reason why they wanted to ban alcohol is because many people were coming home drunk, and what they wanted to do was legislate morality. And while many people stopped drinking legally, what they did was start drinking illegally, and the violence from organized crime was far worse than the drunk individuals. And eventually they had to concede that since people were going to drink, they had to repeal Prohibition. But sadly, many Americans today are not willing to swallow their pride and admit that they wound up failing as related to this whole policy of bail reform, and these policies to go out here and not prosecute people for shoplifting. These policies have basically failed, and instead of conceding that these policies have failed, what many want to do is go out here and do these workarounds in order to try to make things work. But that whole approach to life is codependent, because what you're doing is giving the criminal more power. And as you give the criminal more power, what you're doing is going out and destroying commerce, because the people who used to go out to stores, to go out here and be able to shop at places like Walgreens, like myself, what we're doing is basically just leaving these stores behind, because nobody has the time to wait 5, 10, 15 minutes in order for the one clerk you have on duty to go out here and unlock cases. People don't have that 5, 10, 15 minutes in their day as related to going to a convenience store. That's when the convenience store becomes a complete inconvenience. And once it becomes a complete inconvenience, basically the store is on a road to winding up losing money. And that's what happened to Walgreens, that led to them losing $239 million in the last quarter compared to the previous year's $39 million loss. And they wound up losing that money because, like the CEO says, when you lock things up, you don't sell many of them. And the only way you can sell many of them is in a place like the South Bronx, where you had the heroin epidemic going on. And many of those people basically were captive in that area and had to deal with that codependency because they were too poor to be able to move out of that area. And that's what I found out when I was younger and my brother would take me to Manhattan. I would see stores where the stuff was actually open to be able to buy, and it was a shock to me when I was young. But as I got older, I started to understand the reason why they again locked up stuff in the Bronx was due to the heroin addicts and then the crack addicts who came right after them. And the whole thing with these type of criminals is you can't be soft on them. No, you can't be soft, because if you're soft on them, you enable not only those addicts to go out here and commit crimes, you enable regular everyday people to go out here and commit more of those crimes. And that's basically what's happened at many of these retailers, that has many of them struggling right now to the point where they're looking to close stores. Like Walgreens is getting ready to close stores, and most of those stores are going to be in blue ghetto areas where they basically have gotten all of their money for tax credits, and now that they're running losses, they're looking to close many of those stores. They're looking to close many of those stores because it's not profitable compared to other stores in the area. And that's going to lead to a major drought as related to retail. And this drought related to retail is all, again, due to the retailers themselves enabling dysfunctional individuals as related to their out of control behavior. And again, when you enable bad behavior in people, you get more bad behavior. And the only way to stop bad behavior, like shoplifting, is to punish people for these crimes. Punish people for these crimes and basically put them away to let them know where the line is as related to society. When you let people know where the line is as related to society, you'll see a major deterrent in crime, and that's why it's cheaper to just lock people up rather than go out here and put in all of these anti-theft workarounds, because these anti-theft workarounds are going to cost you in the long term. These anti-theft workarounds basically are costing Walgreens most of its business, and they're costing Walgreens its business because they basically were out here thinking that they could go out here and try to work around things. But when it comes to situations in life, again, when things are not working, you have to admit when something is not working, and you don't do a workaround. No, you have to swallow your pride and say something's not working, and say something's not working because the definition of insanity is trying to do the exact same thing and expect a different result. And that's the big problem with many Americans. They'll keep trying to maintain their pride, and continuing to try to do the exact same thing that doesn't work, because trying to go out here and do policies like bail reform and looking to not prosecute people for shoplifting items under $1,000, trying to keep these policies in place basically is insanity. And it's insanity because I saw this whole pattern happen in the late 1970s and early 1980s when I was growing up. And many retailers wound up leaving areas of New York and blue cities because people kept trying to implement these policies to the point where the business had to close because they couldn't keep taking those losses in proportion to their expenses. They couldn't keep taking these losses, and you reach a point where you have to say, hey, this doesn't work. This is where America is right now. You have to have some humility and admit, hey, this doesn't work. Again, when you lock things up, you don't sell many of them because people nowadays have an option that they didn't have in the 1980s and the late 70s, where you could go to a .com, put in your order, have that stuff delivered to your house, and never set foot in one of these stores and have to deal with all of the hassles and the headaches of waiting for employees. And this is what happens again when you go out here and elect the wrong people. When you elect the wrong people, they go out here and create dysfunctional policies that derail your society because these individuals, again, they have high ideals, but they don't live in the real world. And I talk about this regarding beta males. They live in a rose-colored reality. They don't live in a world of real people. They don't live in a world of real people and deal with real problems. No, these people want to believe everybody is good, which is completely foolish because Jesus himself said that man is evil. And again, part of dealing with these necessary evils is going out here and having consequences and holding people accountable for their behavior, because yes, you may be poor, yes, you may be homeless, yes, you may be in a dire situation, but the whole thing is you don't have to steal. No, there are all sorts of charities and organizations that will go out here and help those who are struggling, but they, like Americans, have to swallow their pride to get that help, and you have to want that help. But the whole thing is these people who are out here shoplifting, a lot of them don't want help. What they want to do is be enabled to continue committing their crimes, and sadly, they wind up getting enabled by dysfunctional far-left prosecutors who want to do policies like catch and release instead of holding these people accountable for their crimes, and making them responsible for their actions. Because when you hold one individual accountable and make them take responsibility for their behavior, that basically makes others see the example. And as they see the example, what they do is not look to commit those crimes or feel emboldened to commit those crimes. That's what happens when you go out here and hold people accountable. It establishes a standard in society, and that standard is one Americans desperately want back. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of blue politicians wound up losing the election last year, because they didn't look to maintain a standard, and people are wanting this standard. And again, the Walgreens CEO, he thinks, oh, I'll just close stores. But closing stores doesn't stop the problem, because these people who are committing crimes, since there's no boundary established, what they do is migrate to other areas. They migrate to other areas to commit more crimes. And the only way you can deal with these individuals is the way Rudy Giuliani dealt with those individuals, by establishing a quality of life initiative, letting people know where the boundary is as related to human behavior, and letting them know there are consequences for violating these laws, letting them know where the line is, because when people know where the line is, they modify their behavior. And as they modify their behavior, what happens is you see a decrease in crime, because people aren't incentivized to commit crimes. And this basically stops a lot of the crimes and basically leads to a safer and more productive society. Now, if you want to learn what motivates people to wind up having this dysfunctional mindset and dysfunctional behavior, you can pick up my books, The Man Crisis and The Woman Crisis, on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find The Man Crisis and The Woman Crisis at other online booksellers like Draft Digital, Google Play, Barnes & Noble, and big box retailers like Walmart and Target. And if you want to see me make more videos going out here talking about different types of subjects, you can drop a donation to the Patreon, the PayPal, or the Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and e-readers, ISIS Legacy. The sorority secrets of the goddess next door are revealed in this all-new ISIS series adventure. Get ISIS Legacy in paperback and e-readers at online booksellers everywhere. Now available in paperback and e-readers, Spinsterella. Discover the dark side of love in this goth and lovely romance with Spinsterella. Get Spinsterella in paperback and e-readers at your favorite online bookseller today. Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.